All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We'll go ahead and call to order the Transportation Committee for July 16th. I'll ask Lindsay to do the roll call.
Okay, I think we still need to get some more people promoted to panelists so that they're able to speak.
Going as fast as I can.
Yeah, I'm trying to help too. Let's see. Doug?
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think we're ready to call roll?
Yeah. Why don't you start, and Cam and I will keep monitoring the attendees to see if other committee members join.
Okay. We will start with Chuck Abraham.
Here.
Okay, Darwin Burkhart, Kevin Carrier,
Here.
Lynette Ciavarella.
Here.
Is Leah Mooney in for Michael Connolly? Yes.
Here.
How about John Donovan?
Here.
Okay, Doug Ferguson,
Present?
Tony Greep, Lisa Lawson-Stark, Robert Hahn, Jessica Hector Sue,
Good morning here.
John Paul Deepla.
Here.
Tom Kelso.
Yeah, Mike Vanderhoff's going to be sitting in for Tom Kelso.
Thank you. Fran Kloss.
This is Jackie Forbes filling in for Fran today.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. About Christina Kupkowski.
I'm here.
Thank you. Eric Llewellyn. Or
Here.
Okay. Chris Hebert.
Here.
Thank you. Tara Orban.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Jessica Ortega. Let's see. And Heidi Persad. Jose Rios. Or
I'm
Brian.
trying to promote Brian Carlson right now.
Okay. Tom Rickert.
Here.
Mayor Rockingham.
Here.
Joe Schofer.
Here.
Dave Seglin.
Brian Carlson is here.
Thank you, Brian.
Dave Seglin is here.
Okay. Chris Snyder.
Present.
P.S. Siraj. Scott Weber. Audrey Wennick.
Here.
And I think Amy's in for Rocco. Amy Lee. Thank you. And that is all.
Thank you, Lindsay. Moving on to agenda changes and announcements. I'll read the statement. As permitted by the Governor's Disaster Declaration of June 25th, 2021, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee. To ensure that the meeting is as transparent as possible, we posted the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance. We'll provide a recording of this meeting linked on the CMAP website, and we'll take all votes by roll call. Are there any agenda changes or announcements?
No agenda changes or announcements, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Moving on to agenda item then number 3, approval of the minutes. A motion is needed to approve the minutes of June 4th as presented. Do I have a motion?
Dave Seglin, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Dave. Second?
Rickard, second.
Was number 2?
Tom. Rickard. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. Are there any comments on the minutes?
Chris, this is Jessica. I just had one comment, which is that there's a reference to RTA as the Regional Transit Authority. Should be the Regional Transportation Authority.
We'll get that corrected.
Minor typo. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hearing no other comments, we'll do a roll call vote for approval of the minutes. Lindsay?
Okay, Chuck Abraham,
Hey.
Kevin Carrier,
Aye.
Lynette Ciavarella,
Aye.
Leah Mooney,
Abstain.
Doug Ferguson,
Aye.
Jessica Hector Sue,
Aye.
John Paul Deepla,
Aye.
Mike Vanderhoff,
Aye.
Jackie Forbes,
Aye.
Christina Kopkowski,
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn,
Aye.
Chris Hebert,
Aye.
Sarah Orban,
Aye.
Jessica Ortega, Brian Carlson,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham,
Aye.
Joe Schofer,
Aye.
Dave Seglin,
Aye.
Chris Snyder,
Aye.
and Audrey Wennick,
Aye.
and Amy Lee.
Amy's
Thank
giving
you.
us the thumbs up.
Okay. That
I
is
don't know if you
all.
saw, but Amy said she is perhaps muted by the host. Can she be unmuted somehow?
Yep, working on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to agenda item 4, committee reports. We'll ask Executive Director Aaron Ellman to provide an update of CMAP board activities. So we'll turn it over to Aaron. Good morning, Aaron.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good. It's good to see everyone. Thanks for a little bit of time on your agenda this morning. Our board typically takes July and August off, so we don't have too much by the way of board updates, but I will mention to the committee that we are planning. This is the governor's executive order to allows us to be able to hold these meetings completely virtual expires, I believe, next week. And so we are planning for a full return to our board and MPO policy committee meeting in the fall at their September meeting. And then we've got our joint meeting as is typically held in October. And then a number of our committees as well. We are working again with our committee liaisons to determine if we, many of you will again be required to meet in person per the Open Meetings Act requirements because of the connection to our board and policy committee. So there will be more details forthcoming for you all on that, but we are excited to have staff and in the office and have guests in the office and show you our historic space. It's a pretty phenomenal space. Even just the entrance to the building itself has these like beautiful placards of transportation system elements from our region. So we are looking forward to sharing that with you and hope you're able to join us in the fall. So just a couple other updates. I know you're hearing from Vicki on the safety resource group, but later this month, we will be meeting with IDOT, FHWA, and MPC to talk a little bit about our plan for addressing ADA transition plans across the region. I know that this was mentioned at the last MPO meeting as an opportunity area, I suppose, for us to do better. And I think that there's a lot of work being done across the region right now. This is sort of a real tangible way for us to support communities and equity goals. So we are excited to help support this initiative and will be, I think, further bringing back that conversation to this committee to share with you sort of what our plan is and in coordination with both our state partners and our federal partners on that, and our civic partners and that to that end. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to share with you all today is that this afternoon I'll have the opportunity to go sit down with Secretary Buttigieg and a whole host of other sort of elected officials, our congressional delegation. We'll be meeting them at the rail yard in Bedford Park this afternoon. So I will be conveying a couple points related to a greener future related to their transportation system, and then the successes we've had as a region working on coordinating some of these major infrastructure programs like CREATE and thinking about how we can continue to leverage our shared expertise together to improve outcomes for our transportation system and for people across our region, and making sure that equity is a key component of that. So those are some highlights of my talking points, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have this morning before turning it back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Aaron. Does anybody have any questions for Aaron?
Not a question. I just wanted to mention that along with Aaron, meeting with Secretary Buttigieg, Commissioner Biaggi will be there, President Preckwinkle, and I believe Secretary Osman will also be in attendance. And I believe Representative Newman and a few other of our members of our delegation will be there too.
That's right. It's a sort of a packed room of folks that'll be there this afternoon. But I do know that the secretary is visiting. Secretary Buttigieg is visiting 95th Street, I believe, Dave, prior to going out to the Create site as well. So he's getting a tour of our infrastructure.
Yes, I should have mentioned Dorval Carter, I believe, from CTA will also be there.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Aaron. Appreciate the update. We'll move on to agenda item 5. We'll ask that Russell provide an overview of the FY 2019-24 TIP amendments. So we'll ask Russ to give an update of that, please.
Okay. Included in your packet today is a memo detailing the 32 TIP changes contained in formal TIP Amendment 21-07 and the 143 TIP changes contained in administrative amendments 21-07.1 and 21-07.2. As seen in the memo, formal amendments resulted in an increase of nearly $86 million in total project cost, of which $34.6 million was an increase in federal cost for all prior, current, and future years in the TIP. Administrative amendments resulted in almost no change in total cost, but federal amount did increase slightly by $7.9 million. The net change for all amendments resulted in nearly $86 million in total costs being added to the TIP in prior, current, and future years, of which $42.5 million are federal funds. As shown in the memo, cost changes comprise most of the formal changes, while administrative amendments were primarily the result of project phases going into or out of advanced construction, with cost changes and schedule changes the next most common changes. The amendments, along with the memo, were posted on July 9th for committee and public review. At this time, staff requests approval of formal TIP Amendment 21-07. I'll take any questions if there are any at this time.
Are there any questions of Doug? Some laughing going on. Okay, well, seeing no questions or hearing no questions, we'll go ahead. I'll entertain a motion to approve the TIP Amendment 2107.
Tara Orban, so moved.
Thank you, Tara. Do I have a second?
Second, Carrier.
Second. Kevin, thank you. Again, there were no comments, so we'll ask Lindsay to do the roll call.
Did they just update?
Okay, Chuck Abraham,
Aye.
Kevin Carrier,
Aye.
Lynette Ciavarella,
Aye.
Leah Mooney,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson,
Aye.
and Jessica Hector Sue,
Aye.
John Paul Depla,
Aye.
Mike Vanderhoff,
Aye.
Jackie Forbes,
Aye.
Christina Kopkowski,
Aye.
Eric Llewellyn, Chris Hebert,
Aye.
Sarah Orban,
Aye.
Jessica Ortega, Brian Carlson,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Mayor Rockingham.
Aye.
Thank you. Joe Schofer,
Aye.
Dave Seglin.
Aye.
Chris Snyder,
Aye.
and Audrey Wenink,
Aye.
Amy Lee.
Aye.
I think I got everybody.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Moving on to item number 6. We'll ask that either Kama and or Doug, which are the recommended CMAC TAP and STP shared fund programs, ask that they give an overview of the programs for each of those, which are now have been released for public comment through the end of the month. So I'll turn it over. Well, I'll let Doug and I'll turn it over to Kama first.
Great, thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. As detailed in the memo in your packet, a joint call for the STP Shared Fund, CMAC, and locally programmed TAP projects was held from January to March of this year. 135 applications for funding were received across all 3 of those funding programs. Staff did evaluate the applications according to methodologies approved by the STP and CMAC project selection committees to determine both eligibility and final scoring in each program. These evaluations led to the development of 3 recommended programs, which were presented to the respective project selection committees and released for public comment on July 1st. Public comment is currently ongoing and will close on Friday, July 30th. So far, we've gotten 4 comments. That was as of, I think, yesterday or early this morning. So the 3 programs combined include over $280 million in federal funding for more than 50 projects, which includes bike ped, bridges, emissions reduction, highway and transit projects that are sponsored by the City of Chicago, suburban municipalities, counties, IDOT, the RTA, and the individual service boards. A little less than half of the funds programmed, about 120 million of the 281 million, are for projects that are located within our region's highest need or cohort 4 communities, and over $25 million in toll credits are being utilized to reduce the local match commitments for 8 projects within these communities. More detailed statistics about each recommended program are contained in the memo, and likewise within the memo there are links to even more details on the individual project scoring in all of those programs. I did want to call out a couple highlights about each of the programs this morning. The CMAC program, which of course is focused on emissions reduction, includes 213 million for 31 projects. While there are more highway projects funded than other project types, the largest investment, or about $190 million, is for transit projects. Combined, the projects are estimated to eliminate 113 kilograms of volatile organic compounds, or VOC, emissions per day. The TAP program, which is focused on implementing the region's Greenways and Trails Plan, includes 22.4 million for 12 bicycle facility projects. The STP Shared Fund program adds 46 million for 9 new projects that will reconstruct 4 roadway segments, improve a major bridge, modernize and improve safety along 2 corridors, and eliminate 2 bicycle and pedestrian barriers. These projects collectively serve over 7.9 million jobs and households, and more than half are located on facilities where more than 20% of the users are minorities living below the poverty line. As I noted earlier, the public comment period is currently open through July 30th, and comments can be submitted by sending an email to transportation@cmap.illinois.gov. Staff really encourages all of the members of this committee to review and discuss the proposed programs both within your agency as well as your constituencies, and to spread the word about the public comment period. After the comment period closes, comments will go back to the STP and CMAC project selection committees for final discussion and program approvals, and then staff will process TIP amendments to incorporate the committee's approved programs, and those TIP amendments will be brought here to the Transportation Committee on September 24th for consideration for a recommendation of approval to the CMAP Board and MPO Policy Committee. So those final approvals are currently scheduled for the joint meeting in October. So if there's questions or comments or discussion this morning, I'm here, Doug's here, and we're happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, Kama. Just one question on the STP Shared Fund. I see that the out years, the 2 years that are programmed, the dollar amount compared to the last call considerably less. And wasn't there with the last call some seeds, some monies from the state of Illinois that kind of shored up that program for the first inaugural call? And then now we're back to about a 20-some million annual element.
Yes, that's correct, Chris. The original agreement between the Council of Mayors and the City of Chicago, which was also endorsed by the CMAP Board and the Policy Committee, did have 75 million spread over 3 years of seed money that IDOT made available. So that money covered the first 3 years of the shared fund program. And then, over time, our marks fluctuate. The share of the region's overall STP goes up over time as that seed money goes down. But currently, based on current funding estimates, it's about 23 million in each of those out years is what we're comfortable predicting to be available. So, of course, with the nature of programming being what it is and new federal legislation hopefully coming, numbers could definitely change.
Okay, thank you, Kama.
Of course.
Did I hear someone, is there any other just general questions? Again, it's open for public comment through the end of the month. Seeing none?
Leah has one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leah. Go ahead.
No, I was quietly raising my hand, which doesn't work well in a virtual environment sometimes. I just wanted to thank Doug for spending some time with me, talking through the process for how the program recommendations are put together. It's, it's complex. There's a lot that goes into the project scoring and then developing a balanced program for each of these. And that there's also a lot to sort of evolve over time. So I want to just thank the CMAP staff and Doug for spending time with me and putting together this program, and just note that CTA would love to participate as conversations continue about how to adapt project scoring and sort of a lessons learned from this particular program.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? At this point, none. Okay, then I'm not seeing any virtual hands, so we'll move on to, so thank you. This was just informational at this point. As Kama mentioned, it'll come before us in September for a formal vote to recommend to policy at that time. So we'll move on to the safety resource group update. And so Vicki will provide an update. Well, what I just said on the safety resource group.
Great, thank you. Is my audio working for everyone?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And how about screen sharing?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. I was last here in January.
Vicki?
Oh, yes.
Quick comment. You're in presenter mode, so everybody can see your notes if that's okay.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Is there a way? I don't want them to be distracting. Is there something else I can do?
Go to display settings.
Okay.
Up the top.
Oh, I see. Yep. 1 second. I saw it.
This is a tutorial for all of us, I think.
I know, right? Every time you think you
Raise
got
your
it.
hand if it's happened to you.
I see. Okay, display settings.
And it should say swap screen.
Right,
Here's
that
the
one.
presenter view slideshow. There you go.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, go to webinar.
One last thing, Vicki, sorry. We're in the middle of your presentation is the go to webinar. I don't know if, there you go.
Perfect.
Wait, I don't want to leave. Let's see, can I just make it small? No.
You're good.
You're fine now.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, now we're back on track. So it's nice to see you all again. I was here in January as we were kicking off work on the safety action agenda, and I'm here today to just present an update on the work that we've done. We've met with our resource group a couple times now, and because we had a few extra minutes in the agenda today, I was going to do a little bit of the preview of some of the ideas that are kind of the state of the practice on speed management today. So you'll get, for our resource group members that are here today, Dave Seglin, Tara Orban, Audrey Wenink, and Heidi, who I'm not sure is here, Heidi Persaud. This will be a little bit of a review for you. So feel free to, keep me honest and make sure I cover everything we did. Let's see. Oh, darn it. Now I'm not able to advance my screen. Let's see. Oh, I apologize.
try using the down arrow, maybe?
Okay. I think part of the problem is that I opened up a different webcam. All right, let's see. Okay, how's that? Great. Okay. I'm just going to try to hit every little snafu today. Okay, so to recap, the mission of the Regional Traffic Safety Action Agenda is to address the long-term regional traffic safety issues in our region, which is a growing number of fatalities on our roadways and a growing number of bicyclist and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. And we want to do this in collaboration with partners. We want to do it from a comprehensive approach, meaning we're going to try to come at it from the education and engineering and enforcement side as much as possible, to make sure that they're all working in concert to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries. We're going to center the work around our On2 2050 guiding principles, which are inclusive growth, resilience, and prioritized investment to make sure we're doing the best possible work that we can do as an MPO. We want to, there's a lot of safety work being done in the region, and we want to support and amplify that work as much as possible. So we see an opportunity there for us to have a role in sharing information and connecting people to resources. That's something I think we've already done a little bit of, and it's been very satisfying. And then eventually, our hope is that this evolves into a long-term regional traffic safety culture and coalition in our region, so that it just has a stronger role in the way people think about our transportation system. So our project timeline, as I mentioned, this is just this current year. The project continues next year, but we kicked off in January with our first resource group meeting, where we kind of just established that mission statement, got some tips and ideas from folks about how CMAP can best influence traffic safety. I'll give you an update on what we did in the interim in just a minute, but then in May, we had our second resource group meeting where we talked about speed management, and we'll go over that a little bit today. That's our first focus area for this work. And then we're hoping the plan is to have another resource group meeting in the fall when we have a fair chunk of our speed management policy work in development, and we can share that with the resource group and start work on the bicycle and pedestrian safety, which is our second focus area. So what we've done so far, as we've, between the resource group meetings and kind of getting everything together to understand how we can influence safety, we have kicked off some local technical assistance projects on safety for the first time, where CMAP's project type was actually a safety project. One of those is the Flossmoor, Village of Flossmoor Local Road Safety Plan. We also started scoping 3 projects to develop safety plans for intersections and corridors in 3 other communities in the region that we hope to do some kind of quick action plan type of work that will address both engineering recommendations, we'll kind of get towards those, but also other operational things that may improve traffic safety on these intersections and corridors. We quickly realized that outreach, education, engagement, and working with the media was one of the fastest ways we could have an influence on traffic safety. So we wrote some articles in our newsletter on safety. In May, we held an event, or it was April, actually, I believe. CMAP Talks Complete Streets Safe by Design, where we were able to highlight a few regional projects that have actually had a safety benefit by applying the Complete Streets approach. We've been doing a lot of outreach with our partners and our committees. We have a safety webpage in development. We have applied for funding to purchase speed data for our region. So as we started to kind of think through addressing speed and recommending speed management approaches, it occurred to us that we really need a better handle on what is happening with driving speeds in our region. Where are people exceeding the speed limits? And there's this exciting new data source out there with these connected devices in cars, whether it's on board or even mobile phones, where it can measure spot speeds across the region in a really broad and comprehensive way. So we're hoping to be able to access that data and then we'll probably hire out the analysis of that data. We actually certainly will hire it out. But the goal is to help communities understand where speeding issues are on their roadways. So the ultimate goal, and it will take a little while, it's a huge data set, is to generate reports, what's going on with speeding in your community. And we've been engaging, as I said, with our resource group, having lots of partner meetings. We work closely with IDOT on safety, and we also have a safety summer intern this summer, Bing Chu Chen, who's here today. So as I mentioned, our first topic to focus on is speed management. We decided, similar to our overall safety work, to address speed management through the different E's of traffic safety. You can talk about speed management from an engineering approach and actual physical constraints or features on a roadway that are known to affect speed. You can talk about operations and technology approaches to speed management. Speed feedback signs are really in the media right now as being effective ways of adjusting people's speeds. Policies and legislation for speed management would be, methods of setting speed limits or adjusting speed limits to better suit the context that we're working in. There's certainly a lot of educational awareness programs out there, and understanding who is speeding and where they're speeding and when they're speeding might help us be able to hone some of those educational programs to address the issue. And then enforcement practices. It's in the news a lot about enforcement and the equity impacts, and there are some evolving thoughts about how we can do a better job with enforcement that preserves the dignity and rights of people, that maybe saves local enforcement agencies some money. And I'm going to talk about one of those ideas that's out there today. So all of this work is strongly focused through the equity lens that we talked about in the opening slide, the process through which these changes can be made in our region. That's a really important piece. The partners that we'll work with, and then how to measure progress. That's another key feature of this work. So I'm going to just jump in because we had a few minutes and share with you what some other communities are doing in our country to address speed management. These are just examples of ideas that are kind of in the media. They're showing signs of success, and we want to make sure that we kind of understand the dimensions of them as we do our research. This list is neither conclusive nor exhaustive. They're ideas to kind of generate thought and think about, what could work here and what couldn't, and then again to unpack the data associated with it to understand if it would be effective here. And again, these are also intended, as anyone who works in traffic safety knows, it's a big topic and there are a lot of dimensions to it. And we could easily spend years developing policy, but we want to keep an eye on making a difference, a meaningful difference quickly. So implementation is at the top of the list of our ideas. So in the news, these are just some headlines to demonstrate that not only is the Chicago region, not alone in this, but it is indeed a national issue, not just with traffic safety in general, but even speeding. For the first time, the National Transportation Safety Board put speed management on its top 10 lists of transportation safety issues. They haven't really been in the business of highway safety before, but it's become such an issue that NTSB has now partnered with Vision Zero to talk about speed management. There are lots of other communities, and certainly in Chicago, there's a sense that the growing number of traffic fatalities last year was related to speeding. So as we think about approaches to speed management from an engineering or design approach, there is this growing traction around an idea of a self-enforcing street. And in some ways, this is the reinvention of traffic calming, but the major difference is that rather than just adding in elements that are to slow traffic down, a broader picture about target speeds is considered. So rather than reacting to the speeds that people want to drive, we want to design a street according to the target speed that we think is safe for them to drive. And these approaches vary vary vastly by context, as you can see in the pictures. You know, you would use different design features on an arterial than you would in a local neighborhood. But the idea is to implement these horizontal, vertical, and cross-sectional components to signal to drivers to slow down, and to do it in a very thoughtful way with a target speed in mind. A policy example that's gaining traction in terms of speed management is adjusting the way we set speed limits. As many of you know, the 85th percentile approach has some embedded biases towards higher operating speeds. It generally supports the desired operating speed of a driver, which has been done in large part to minimize variance in speed. But with design elements that are set towards a target speed and a slightly different approach to setting speed limits, you can probably kind of work on reducing those operating speeds on different types of roadways. And that's something that's a couple cities are testing out right now, including Seattle, who not only reduced speed limits, but they increased the frequency of speed limit signage in their community and had a pretty dramatic reduction in their crash rates.
Interesting.
So the education example and that we're looking towards, there are some other MPOs doing this kind of work, is kind of leading the charge in a regional traffic safety culture where there is regular reporting and regular meeting on issues related to traffic safety, publicizing that information, providing training and technical assistance to partners in the region, potentially aligning safety work with funding opportunities, and also helping communities measure performance, which is also included in this idea that we have about getting the speed data and kind of daylighting where speeding issues are happening, and then equipment that we could use to measure speeding after a project or a program is implemented. An enforcement example that people are talking about right now, there's a couple, I mean, certainly Chicago is experimenting with this, as is New York City, but speed cameras, which they are calling them safety cameras in New York City very consciously, is this huge experiment. I think they're now up to 2,000 speed cameras in New York City. They started at school zones and they've expanded outward. And this is brand new, where the data is just coming in, but similar to Chicago, they are seeing early signs of success with these programs. They are not only showing fewer collisions in the areas where they exist, but a rapid decline in the average weekly violations after they're installed. Now, no one's pretending this would be an easy lift here. There's been some media issues here, but it is something that the data is showing is successful, and we're looking into analyzing that a little bit more. Different types of communities use them differently. So some put them near school zones. Some communities put them at the entrance or where a speed limit changes, the entrance to the community where the jurisdiction changes. There are potential equity issues that have been daylighted here that we're looking into very carefully to make sure that their location and their impacts are not felt disproportionately by people of color. That's something that we're looking closely at. The caveat to electronic or automated enforcement is that, of course, it doesn't control for the issues, the other issues that may be happening in the vehicle, such as impairment or restraint use. So that's kind of like a sneak peek into some of the speed management examples that we're looking at. And I just wanted to open it up to you all to get your reaction, to make sure that we're covering the topics that you feel are the most important in your jurisdiction or community or agency. And while we're wrapping our head around all kinds of data sets to make sure that we're incorporating the most important things. So with that, I invite any questions or discussions or points that you would want to make sure that we include.
A quick comment from Joe Schofer. The idea of traffic calming, I'm old enough to remember the beginnings of traffic calming. It's not something to walk away from, But linking that to the notion of improving the general quality of life in communities might be a synergy that would bring some value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Vicki, did you say that, and I don't, maybe it was a much earlier slide, we're talking about speed management, but again, a lot of, the speeding, obviously the increased speed, increased fatality risk, but also the increase in bike ped related accidents. Is that a parallel track but similar? Because when you're talking about speed management in some of these corridors, the other thing is just making sure that the pedestrians and the bicyclists are, adequately visible. So I look at traffic calming, I look at a lot of things that might engineer an environment that might suggest you slow down, but you got to measure that and meter that against the environment that the pedestrian bicyclists operate in, and that is that they're clearly visible to the motorists.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you're picking up on exactly a tension between this, sight distance, stopping sight distance, and this idea that you create a little visual friction for the driver to get them to slow down. There's definitely like a needle, a thread there that you have to find the right balance, which is something that we are looking into. I think that's a great point. And we're touching on the topic of how speed relates to bicycle and pedestrian safety in this first speed management paper. And certainly we will, take that to the next level in the bicycle and pedestrian safety paper when we start that in the fall.
I know you touched on the speed feedback kind of briefly. Whenever we put those up, we see an immediate response by motorists. We're buying more and more and putting them out on our system, deploying them, and then moving away and keeping the same spot. People get used to it. So I don't know if there's data. You had the data about the more frequency of the signage may have a 20 to 25% benefit, or 20 to 40. I don't know if you have anything on the speed feedback, but we found them to be very, very useful. The public, when they complain about speeding and they see that go up, oftentimes we get a positive response. Thank you for that. As long as it's not blinking in the window.
Right. Well, and there's even examples of people embedding those types of speed feedback loops permanently now in key locations, whether that's where a speed limit transitions or in a school zone or in a downtown area where there are higher levels of bicycle and pedestrian activity. So yeah, they are being shown to be very effective across the board.
Hey, Chris, this is Kevin with Lake County. Just a couple of comments. I wanted to say, this is great work. As an engineer, it gets the creative juices flowing this morning, certainly. And we have a local safety task force too in Lake County with some of our enforcement agencies and stuff like that. And it's all a lot of similar type of stuff, speeding, distracted driving and all that kind of stuff there too. So it's spot on with everything we're seeing. The speed data was interesting too. I didn't really think about that, and kind of like from a point now looking forward, just wondering if there's a way to maybe get some historic data on that. I know like at Lake County, I'm not one of the traffic guys, but I know that we keep like speed studies and we do those periodically looking backwards. It'd just be, wonderful, or if we can say, hey, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the average speed was this, and now, we're seeing a huge increase or something like that. Because anecdotally, I think we kind of see that or feel that, but it'd just be kind of, I don't know if there's a way to get to that or not. Might be something that'd be interesting. And then the other thing too, the design of the roads. We typically design our roads at like a speed limit plus 10 miles an hour for design speed and stuff like that, which, like you said, inherently gets maybe the roads a little bit bigger or wider, and then kind of leads to people feeling more comfortable with them. We've had that philosophical discussion too. Is there a way to kind of scale that back so you make the roads feel a little, not you go with narrower lanes or something, but getting that feel that maybe people don't feel comfortable doing 60, 70 miles an hour on an arterial road, that they feel a little less comfortable, and maybe scale it back in terms of the speed. So just wanted to throw those two out there and kind of spot on. This is a great presentation too. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those comments. We're on the same track, trying to look at how that speed setting process, speed limit process may have a bias in it, and how we could possibly look at something more like a target speed. So that's interesting. Thank you.
Are there any
Hi,
other?
this is Dave with CDOT. I was wondering, how do you plan on addressing any legislative issues that we want to raise? I mean, will there be a special meeting for that, or do you just see them kind of coming up organically through this process?
You know, as we develop each of these chapters, and indeed there's one on policies in this paper, we're kind of trying to make sure we have our hands around all sides of the box so that when we do gather stakeholders and partners together to understand, you know, what a recommendation could be or what's lacking in current legislation, that we are poised to make that move, you know, as best we can. So I know that you and I have talked a little bit about complete streets legislation and strengthening that. And certainly there's a lot of safety benefits associated with complete streets designs that we were able to discuss a little bit this spring. And we see a lot of potential there for improving that. So we want to look at what other legislation examples are out there and what we could do better here in Illinois.
I guess my concern is that I feel if we don't start talking about specific legislation now, we're going to miss next year's legislative session. And suddenly now we're into 2023 before we actually make any changes. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. I'll make a note of that timeline. Thank you.
So Leah here with CTA. I have a couple thoughts. I think this is really exciting. You know, most transit riders at some point are also pedestrians. So having that pedestrian environment be safe is critical for our riders. One of the things I think the report could think about a little bit or address is how providing opportunities for transit priority could actually intersect well with this type of traffic calming and complete streets approach. I think in the past it's been a little bit too either or. And I think, you know, even having dedicated bus lanes on the curbside can actually, because buses don't really have a need to speed, right? They can drive the speed limit, that's good enough for us. Can, with good enforcement, actually be a safer environment than having, you know, what I experience on arterials in Chicago, where you have cars whipping by at 60 miles per hour. So even dedicated bus lanes, but also things like bus boarding bulbs or bus boarding islands where the bus is stopping in the travel lane can be ways to, you know, sort of improve the complete streets and improve traffic safety while considering priority of bus riders.
Yeah, and adding some horizontal elements to the roadway to slow down vehicles. I like that idea a lot. You know, arterials are really, we're getting a sense that they're going to be a focus because our work is already kind of a little bit more focused and not necessarily on highway safety. I mean, that will be a topic, but it's these places where all the different modes come together. And it's also the place where pedestrian crashes, at least nationally, are occurring. We're still in the process of understanding if that's happening here in Chicago. But because the crossing distances, you know, the distance between intersections can be a little longer in arterials. So you're seeing more pedestrians cross mid-block, and many of them are transit users. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for safety improvements on arterials. And transit will be a big part of that.
Thanks, Vicki, and that's great. And you know, I think for us too, this enforcement challenge is a big one when you do have bus priorities. We'd be interested in sort of the legislative discussion around that. I know cameras have been kind of a hot button issue, a little bit of a third rail, so to speak. But one of the things that was interesting to me was thinking about how penalties can actually be managed on the back end. So, you know, the cameras on the front end are taking pictures and they should be sort of agnostic, right? It's just whether you're speeding or using the bus lane. On the back end, as you figure out how to resolve people's mounting fines or fees or whatever, are there ways to have other forms of restitution or giving back that don't just, you know, sort of put people further in debt? So I'm interested in that as a way to sort of mitigate some of the equity challenges.
Yes.
MUTCD was sort of re-looking at some of their policies, and obviously that drives some of this too, and being able to think about how we change as you said, I really like what you were saying about that 85th percentile, because that's really focused on what people want to do rather than what they should be doing. So,
right.
So thank you for this work. It's super interesting.
Great, thank you. And we are, I've been working with the folks who the fees, fines, and fares. We've been coordinating about the impacts of traffic safety fines, and that's definitely feeding into the safety work as well.
Okay, good.
Hey, Vicki, this is Amy. Sorry, Tom, I just cut right in front of you. I recognize that a lot of the work recently has been really focused on arterials, so this has been very supportive of this. From the tollway outside looking in on this, we recognize too that there's a lot of congestion on our expressways, and that is what is diverting a lot of these long distance regional trips onto arterials. So I just want to flag that. That's a concern, and we should really be looking at as a region.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about perhaps seeing if there is ways to put some of this information on CMAP's website. In discussions both with Aaron and yourself, you've been very responsive, and you've gotten me different information on some of the practices around the country. And but I think that a few years ago, this committee made this one of our strongest priorities, knowing that we needed to start addressing this. I think it was 2017, 2018 at the time. And so this effort is a great effort. At the same time, it'd be nice to, if there are working group meetings, be nice to be able to attend if we have opportunity. Each of our agencies are all working diligently to try to address this issue. But it's been also difficult to dig into some of the different efforts that are going on regionally. So it'd be great if there's ways of knowing when some of these working group meetings are. And again, thank you very much, because every time I've reached out trying to ask questions and try to find information, CMAP has been very responsive. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Tom. It's great input.
Hi, this is Audrey from the Metropolitan Planning Council. I just wanted to ask, to what extent could we be coordinating better with at the state level? The state has all states are required by the federal government to develop strategic highway safety plans, and they have governor's highway safety offices. And I feel like we have not really talked with them that much as part of this. I know they were present, some of their staff were present at some of the workshops, but I wonder if there's a way for us to hone in more on what the state level plans are in these areas so that we can better leverage those resources in our region.
That's great. We are coordinating. We have quarterly meetings with the Bureau of Safety at IDOT, and we're expanding the work that we're doing with them. But I think you're right. There's a lot of opportunities for us to do better together there. That's something we're hoping evolves very soon out of this.
Are there any other comments? The other thing, kind of building on what Dave said about the legislative cycle, there's also the annual call for projects from the state for safety, and that typically occurs, if I recall, first quarter of the year. And so, depending on what comes out of this study group or some recommendations, my hope is that we could maybe leverage with the states, even if it's just demonstration projects, find a couple communities and a couple cross sections to see, implementing these and doing some real live implementation, but also follow up
Yes.
on that.
Yes, that's great. And they just put out a request for information in May and June, indicating that they wanted to hear from communities and agencies about their traffic safety concerns, and we're working closely to figure out how people responded to that and how we might be able to play a role in helping. Okay. That's great. Thank you, Chris.
Great. Anything else? So Good discussion, good feedback. Thank you, Vicky and everyone. If there's no other items, we'll switch presenters. Look at me like I know what I'm doing. And we'll move on to agenda item 8, legislative update. So we'll turn it over to either Tim and/or Anthony. We'll start with Tim on the federal side.
Nice. That sounds good. Good morning, everyone. For this morning's federal update, I'm going to be providing the latest on what we've been following in DC the last month, and quite a bit has happened. So at the end of last month, the president announced a framework with a bipartisan group of Senate Republicans and Democrats for a new infrastructure deal. The framework would provide $974 billion over the next 5 years. $579 billion of that total would be new or additional spending for transportation infrastructure, as well as other infrastructure for water and energy projects. So the final bill text has yet to be released, so we're keeping an eye on that. But the Senate leadership has indicated that they would like a bill passed before the August 9th recess. And they've scheduled a vote on the package for this upcoming Wednesday. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that early next week or this weekend to see when that bill text gets released. And so we're keeping a close eye on both the Senate, and then when that gets released and how that may compare to the INVEST Act, which was passed by the House earlier this month. So the INVEST Act is the House version of this bill, which would provide $715 billion over 5 years for both traditional infrastructure and water and wastewater infrastructure. It's not clear, however, how much, if any, of the INVEST Act is being considered within this Senate deal, especially since the Senate Commerce Committee and Senate Environment and Public Works Committees have already passed their jurisdictional titles of that bill for roads and rail. So we're going to just be keeping an eye on that next week, and we're hoping that there's some movement there. On a parallel track, the Speaker of the House has indicated she will not move forward on a Senate infrastructure bill until the Senate passes its $3.2 trillion budget reconciliation package. So you can think of this as like a second American Rescue Plan, but focused on more human infrastructure. So there's funding for expanded caregiving resources, free community college, national paid leave, just to name a few of those initiatives. So that's the state of play right now in DC, and Congress has until September 30th, as we all know, to either pass another FAST Act extension or one of these new reauthorization bills. And then the other thing I wanted to mention before I wrap up, I just wanted to flag a funding opportunity from the FTA that was announced at the end of June. They made $16.3 million available in competitive grants to target areas of persistent poverty. This funding supports projects that could improve transit services or facilities in areas of persistent poverty through planning, engineering, technical studies, or financial plans for projects. The deadline to apply for this funding is August 30th, and there is a 90-10 federal local match on that program. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have, and I don't believe Gordon has a state report, but he is here as well for any questions on either the federal or state side.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for either Tim or Gordon if he's available, federal, state? None? We're all legislated out? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to other business. Are there any items to be brought to the committee under other business by any of the members? Seeing none, must be getting toward lunchtime. We'll now move on to agenda item 10, public comment. Doug or Lindsay, do we have any public comments that have been submitted, or anybody on that wants to make a public comment?
So Chris, we didn't receive any public comments in advance. There were a couple of questions in the chat during Vicky's presentation. I can read those. And if anybody in the audience wishes to make a public comment, please raise your hand. using the toolbar. So the first question was, are speed cameras allowed outside of the city of Chicago? I don't know, Vicki, are you still there?
I am. They were enabled under a piece of legislation called the School Zone Safety Camera Program. And there are some restrictions in the legislation that require the city to be of a certain population. And if I remember correctly, a big enabling piece of the legislation is for very large cities, like over 1 million. So there was a way in which they were written to enable only in Chicago, I believe. We're confirming that. I think separate legislation, or the legislation would have to be changed for it to be expanded to other cities at this point.
And the other question, I'm not sure what the person asking the question is asking. It stated, what's new about this? Aren't they just cameras? So I don't know if that individual is still on, if they want to clarify what they were referring to with this. I'm not seeing.
I unmuted Jamie.
Okay, Jamie.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, this is Jamie from CDOT, and that was my question. And out of context, it does sound odd. I think when the presentation was going, I think you said that this was new. There was some new aspect of the cameras, but I may have understood that it was just a new part of a program. So I was just wondering what was new about the cameras. You know, we talk a lot about our red light and speed cameras. So I was just wondering what the new aspect was, or maybe I misunderstood.
Well, it would be a broader application of those cameras in other communities. Yeah, that's mostly that. It's something that people are looking towards as a way to do traffic safety enforcement in different types of communities and different applications. It's kind of evolving that way. But yes, you're right. It's well established in Chicago.
Okay, so I didn't know if I had missed there was new technology or a new application, but it sounds like it's just in new places.
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Chris, no one else has indicated that they wish to make a public comment.
Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 11. The next meeting is August 27th. I presume 9:30 as always. So with that, do I get to move to adjourn? Is it a move and a motion, or is it just I adjourn the meeting?
You can just adjourn the meeting.
All right, then I will go ahead and adjourn today's meeting to August 27, 2021. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris.
Great.
Have
We'll
a good
see you in
day.
person.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
good day, everyone.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
I always like to stay on to see who's going to be the last one to drop off. It's like a staring contest.
I think it'll be Chris Schneider.
Well, given that
You
this
wanna
is one of our
stop the
shortest
recording?
meetings.
I'm working on that. There we go.